Like this description, you would love it to read. Like, yeah, those that know their God and will be strong and take action, and those who have insight among the people will give understanding to many and will prosper and have land and and be safe and hidden, among, and people won't find them and they'll just live like kings. Like, I don't know. I just thought it was so interesting to see that. That's like, oh man, following Jesus, following God comes with
It sure
persecution. Like it
does.
just does. And that's the promise really and the assurance. And it's important to know that. Yo, welcome back to the Vibes Daily Podcast. It is day 264 of our year-long series we have titled Devoted, as we journey through the entire Bible from cover to cover, from Genesis to Revelation. You have joined us here in the book of Daniel, and I am back with my wife, Victoria, as we bring this book to a close. Short book compared to the other prophets that we have been in.
Yeah.
Only 3 days of reading, only 12 chapters total. But we are in now the second half of Daniel, where we are getting much more visions of the future,
Right.
And what is to come. A lot less narrative and now more prophecy, right? Specifically that we're getting from Daniel. And so we left off in 8, which had backtracked us a little bit to King Belshazzar. We're now back to King Darius, Darius, but the homie Darius.
Darius.
Yeah. And we're here again. And there's this prayer that's really prompted essentially by Jeremiah's prophecy, right? And Jeremiah's prophecy in 29 and other places that reminded them that the exiles would be there for about 70 years. It's kind of what they would expect. And as that time was kind of coming close to an end,
Close. He's like, Lord.
Daniel was like, well, let me go before the Lord and pray and get some clarity on whether we will indeed be returning as we expected. What jumped out to you here in chapter 9 as we get this prayer from Daniel?
Yeah, that verse 3. He was like, no, we getting close. So I'm going in. We're doing prayers, petitions, fasting. Now we got the sackcloth and ashes. We got the whole thing, because I need to inquire of the Lord. And I love that these prophets, they pray really on behalf of the entire nation and all the people. And like, even since that he did not commit himself, he is personalized as we, right? Like we rebelled against you. We have not obeyed the Lord, right? This is verse 9, followed his instructions, all of that. It wasn't like, he could have very well went into this prayer and been like, Lord, your people been acting up. They ain't been doing nothing. I've been praying.
Right.
Now
I've been doing my part.
Been doing my part. I've been righteous. But the rest of them are heathens. And so like he could have said that, but he didn't. He personalizes it and he prays on behalf of the people, which is really a challenge for me in terms of like, how often am I praying for, and not to say everyone around me is evil and I'm righteous. I'm not saying that at all. But just in general, I'm just saying, how many times have I just gone in prayer for everyone around me, right? Or my family, or my community, or like you said, the city that we're in. And so that stuck out to me first. He goes all the way back to like the reasons why. It's because back in Moses, you told us this would happen. And I love that he goes that far back in verse 11. He's just like, written in the law of Moses, the servant of God has been poured out on us because we have sinned against him, right? Like there's this promised curse. So I love that he kind of takes us back there. Once again, Gabriel comes back and he helps him in his weariness again, right? He says, from the moment that you started praying this, I've come to you and you are treasured by God. And so I think that is just so much comfort to even just hear an angel from the Lord come down and tell you, like, you are treasured by God. Like, from the moment you started praying, the heavenly realm was acting, right, in response to your prayer. And I know, what's one of the, I'm going on a tangent now, but what's his name? Torrin Wells. And the Never Lost song with Elevation. He's like, if you only knew what was happening when you prayed, right? When you pray, like, God goes to work. And this is where I see here, where it's kind of like, do we even think that our prayers are having any effect? Or like, do we even feel like our prayers are, that the Lord's doing anything, right? But like, Daniel had the faith, he prayed, he's been righteous, and from that moment that he started praying, like, stuff started changing, right? Like, angels started moving at God's command to come and assure him of things and reveal things of him and explain things to him.
Yeah.
I think that's so crazy.
Yeah. No, I love that, because I think of all of what we get here, because I mean, again, big picture, he's praying about this. Ultimately, he doesn't get good news.
No.
God is kind of saying, like, it's actually gonna be a lot longer than you expect. Like,
Because y'all still cutting up.
Yeah, until this. And now again, it's still a prophecy of the Messiah coming. Like, ultimately is what he gets is that, like, the Messiah will come essentially 490 years ish, right? It's kind of based off of that 70 times 7, which is the translation of these weeks to years. But I think the piece that you brought up, it is verse 20 and 21. I felt it was just like the most significant in this whole chapter. So the other parts of it that I appreciate was, as you said, I guess I'll start with that, is I thought it was interesting that he says at the beginning of your petitions, answer went out.
Yep.
Like, because to me it says that although Daniel had not heard the answer yet, God had already delivered it.
Yes.
It just hadn't reached him, if that makes sense, right? Like, and so I don't know. I just thought that was so interesting that it's just not this, it's not always this like instantaneous. And we've seen this, right? We saw that with, can't even tell you which prophet at this point. They're kind of rubbing together, but like that they went to seek the Lord and they prayed, and it took like 10 days or something to hear something back, to know what to do next, right? And so like, I appreciate that there is this clear thing that like God may have answered instantaneously, but it just took some time before we got it back. So I don't know. I just thought that's just a practical thing as we pray and as we seek the Lord, but as we're waiting and we're in that waiting time, doesn't mean God hasn't heard us, right? Or whatnot. So I thought that was interesting. And then I did think it was important that he reached him in his extreme weariness.
His weariness. Yeah.
That it was like in his weakest point, right? And I talk a lot about, we'll get to it more practically when we get to Matthew, but when Jesus fasts for 40 days, and it's in his weariness essentially that like the enemy comes to tempt him and those kind of things. And so I don't know, I just think it's interesting that like at that point of exhaustion, that's where he shows up with an answer. And like thinking about even in our times of fasting and stuff, like how often do we get to that point where we're expecting God to answer us on like day one of the fast?
Listen, we hungry. You don't answer yet?
Yeah, we expect him to show up like day one, and it's like, nah, man. It's once he gets to that weary point, that point of desperation, that point of real thirst and hunger, that he shows up. So that was kind of some of the practical things that I took from it, more so than just the prophecy of the Messiah. And again, I mean, it's still very interesting because again, we will get to that when we get to Matthew, like some of the time that has passed specifically, and it is eerily close, like to when Jesus will show up as far as the actual timing of all of this in years. But I think those 2 verses or 3 verses were the ones that really stuck out to me. But
Yeah.
anything
Yeah.
else for you here in 9?
I think in that leads me into 10, like you said, this waiting, because in chapter 10 here, he's now with King Cyrus of Persia, right? So some more time has passed, right? And yeah, and so here he is fasting for 3 weeks. This is where we get our Daniel's fast from, right? And fasting from meat and stuff, and for about 3 weeks, and yeah, and so here, this is one of my favorite chapters in the entire Bible.
Okay, why?
This is one of my favorite, because I just be so intrigued about what be happening in the heavenly realm here.
Okay.
And so here, he says, finally, like a hand touched him. He says, Daniel, once again, you are a man treasured by God, right? And he stands him up on his feet. And like you said in this previous chapter, chapter 9, that like they were working on his behalf. Verse 12, it says, do not be afraid, Daniel, he said to me, for from the first day that you proposed to understand, to humble yourself before the Lord, your prayers were heard. I have come because of your prayers.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, that is so deep. But then, this is like my comic book here, right? But then the prince of the kingdom of Persia opposed me for 21 days. Then Michael, one of the chief princes, right, or the archangel, right, in some translations, came to help me after I had been left there with the kings of Persia. Now I have come to help you understand what will happen to your people in the last days, for the vision refers to those days, right? And so I love this, that it's kind of like, okay, I was praying. God heard my prayers, sent an angel. He got caught up in the battle, right? Like we fight in the spiritual realm. This ain't the real prince of Persia we talking about here. This is some type of heavenly being that's opposing God's angels, right? Yep. And this dude was so powerful that Michael, head of the Lord's army, right, had to come and help and like trade out, like boom, tag me in, like you got me, like okay, I'm gonna go and run at this errand. You hold it down right here. And I just love it that like they really scrapping. They scrapping in the heavenly places, babe.
Yes. That is.
It's like it's for real a battle.
Yeah.
It's just so dope.
You're so excited about this.
I'm so excited. Like
you're so excited about this.
I mean, it's like my I don't know, it's like my movie, like
Yeah, but I mean I think like it goes back to, well not back to, I guess we're going forward some, but Paul says that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, right?
Come on.
And
Ephesians
I think
6.
like that sounds cute. Like so many scriptures, I think we recite them, we know them, and they have become so
poetic.
Poetic and common that it just feels like that's cute. That's just a thing to encourage me on the days that it's tough, that it's it's things happening, but like we don't take them literally anymore, and just really acknowledge that yes, there is an actual like spiritual realm that many of us don't have visual access to. Some do, but many of us don't. That is happening like around us, that we are just simply like Francis Chan did this illustration.
So good.
Where he just kind of had some roly polies on on like a what do you call those things again? I can't remember what the old church basement used, the little projector, transparency projectors. And, it just was just talking about how these roly polies have no idea what's happening in the rest of the room. Like they have no idea that people's out here watching them on this projector right now and rooting them on to whatever case may be. He was like, that's literally what our life, like we're just living our everyday life.
Roly polies.
Yeah, legit. I mean, compared to what's out there, like our understanding and our access and whatnot, yet there's just a literal war going on around us constantly. And I think to your point, it's it's taking these kind of scriptures and passages literally and understanding that
Yeah.
this is what's actually happening. And again, it's what I appreciate about Ezekiel, because I felt like he gave us some vision of that and some insight into that as well. But
and then verse 20, like you said, like this is real life happenings. In verse 20, he says, I must return at once. Like, good talk, right?
yeah,
I came to you and I delivered this message. Good talk. But I have to go, because I still have to fight against this prince of Persia. And when I leave, the prince of Greece will come. Like, we scrapping for days, okay?
yeah.
And however, I'll tell you what is recorded in the book of truth. It says, no one has the courage to support me against those princes except Michael, your prince. That was so deep to me too, because I'm like, wait a minute. So you even telling me that, like, even some angels be getting discouraged?
Yeah.
Like, even the angels is discouraged about what's, and so that's what plagues me when I see us humans making fun of Satan or the devil with like the pitchfork and the tail and the stuff, as if like, and we have these like little songs like knock the devil, you know, like you don't even know what you're talking about. Not that we should be afraid of them, because we have God, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he fights on their behalf. But if these heavenly beings are shook and don't have the courage to fight sometimes, what makes us think that we just la through life with no concern about what we dibble dabble in and how we stray from the Lord, or you know, like that we think we can just do what we want and the Lord knows my heart, but I just be out here floating around, not understanding the schemes that the enemy is using to snatch me up.
Yeah.
Like, I should always have this, like, oh, I need to be as righteous as possible. Not because I'm Miss Goody Two Short, because I need to stay underneath the covering of the Lord, because he's the one fighting my battles, right? He's the only one who has somebody with the courage to fight my battles for me, right? Yeah. Michael is described as our prince, right? That fights for us. Like, okay, thank you, Mikey, for going. But I need to stay underneath the Lord's blessings, because if not, like, there really is a whole realm out there that is fighting, and I don't want to be caught on the wrong sideline, you know, or on the wrong line of the battlefield.
Yeah.
Like, and it just shows me just how real this is, because we know that the Lord has an army. We saw them show up with Elisha, right, to fight. But you mean to tell me some of them have lost courage even in this battle here, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was all.
Yeah, that is very interesting. I think we can get on a whole kind of conversation on like,
don't get me started,
spiritual warfare, but like there were a couple other just footnotes on this before we kind of get into 11 completely. I thought were interesting. One, I did think was interesting that like he stood among some men, but he was the only one that saw this vision, right? Like there were others around him who didn't see it. They were afraid. There was terror that fell on them, and they ran and hid, but they didn't ultimately see what happened. So just some of that. I do love your continued emphasis on the fact that Daniel is treasured by God, and like I don't know, just that like even what he got to see and what was revealed to him wasn't something he necessarily sought after. This wasn't something that he desired from the Lord. Like, he simply just prayed. Like, he just prayed like, God. The first prayer was just like, God, so we going home or what? You know? And like, and God showed up to him and gave him this privilege simply because he was treasured. So I don't know. I just thought it was interesting that he wasn't actually seeking that out, but God would bring that to him and then just continue to encourage him, because he was afraid, and he would be, you know, on his knees and all this stuff, and he just kept lifting him up like, man, you good,
strengthening him,
straighten up, man, stand up, man, know who you are in God, like know that you belong here, right, like you are treasured by the Lord. He loves you, and you can stand up. And so I thought that was really good too. But chapter 11, we get kind of these kings, particularly this king in the south and the north, kind of dominates this chapter, in some of the back and forth, and even just the what the king of the north will ultimately do. What was interesting to you in chapter 11, which actually kind of goes into chapter 12 as well.
It does, yeah. Yeah, I think it was interesting that it started with like these kings from Persia are going to arise, and then this kingdom of Greece is going to arise, and then I really had to lean on like my study Bible for this one, because these kings of the south and the north keep changing, right? Because they get conquered, and then the next person from the north, whoever is reigning, comes, and then they fight and they get conquered, and so it seems like, I can say, I don't know if this is absolute truth here, but in my study Bible, like, it seems like these are noted like kingdoms that have already came, right? That have fallen and rose. I mean, I feel like one point the mentioning of some princess, who got married, but they mentioned it was possibly Cleopatra, and I mean, there's a whole bunch happening here where they have like names and dates and to these empires who are rising and falling here. And so for me, I think just overall, I mean, just seeing that they have actual kingdoms here with actual kings' names and dates of their ruling, and that the pattern of how things happen and played out aligned to these visions. Once again, just from the beginning, when we were talking about the validity of Daniel in his interpretations of these dreams or these visions that he was given, it just shows like, yeah, we couldn't have known that he was real deal until these things happened. But obviously this thing has happened over hundreds of years, right? Like, it was a long time. Not one person could see all of this happen.
Yeah.
But just knowing that like these things have occurred. And then it shifts at one point from actual things have already occurred to more like end of times type rhetoric at the end of 12 and stuff. And so we start getting some end of the time stuff. And so it showed me, if he's accurately predicting these things, not predicting, but accurately giving revelation about these things that have already occurred.
Yeah.
Like, pay attention and gear yourself up for what the end times might be, because we don't know when the time's going to be, right? We should always live in that anticipation that the end times is here, right? And be ready for that, and like you said, and be expecting that. And so I think that's where mostly I can't even get into the nitty-gritty, the weeds of all this, because I was overwhelmed eating my popcorn and watching this show of my commentary down below. But yeah, but it was a lot in terms of just like who came to rise and who fell, and how it aligned with these visions. And then at one point just realizing that like, wow, this really happened. Like, this no longer was like a mystery of who these people were. They actually have names to them now.
Yeah, no, there's definitely, like I said, there's some, it's really fun to read this in hindsight, because again, we see back to even what God says to Jeremiah, right? Where he's just like, yeah, the prophet will be proven true eventually, right?
Exactly.
Like, this was back when he was going at it with Hananiah or whatever the prophet was. I was like, yeah, in 2 years, everything will be good. And he was just like, look, ultimately, a prophet sounds good until their word has to actually stand up against what's going to happen. And so we get the hindsight to know that, yes, this is referring to actual kingdoms and actual kings that will rise up and some other stuff kind of early in these visions. But, I think, like I said, that is interesting, and it does give validity to even what's coming, right? Back to your early point from when we started on Wednesday, that like, yeah, the fact that he can even call out Nebuchadnezzar's dream that had happened before Nebuchadnezzar told him, as you said, gives validity to everything that comes thereafter, right? Like, we already know he gets this divine revelation. So I think that's a good point. I'll say the only thing that really stuck out to me, because again, I'm always trying to looking at like what are our takeaways? Like, what can we actually do with this? Because it is a lot here that doesn't feel always so applicable. But I thought it was interesting. He describes kind of in verses starting at 32, where
Get out. This is chapter 11.
yeah, there's only 32 chapters in 11. I mean verses. There's no 32 verses in 12.
You didn't start it right where the money was. Go on, get it.
Okay, well now I gotta live up to the pressure. But
It's all the
but no, I'll just read it. It says, with flattery he will corrupt those who act wickedly toward the covenant, but the people who know their God will be strong and take action.
Yep.
Those who have insight among the people will give understanding to many, yet they will fall by the sword and flame and be captured and plundered for a time. When they fall, they will be helped by some, but many others will join them insincerely. Some of those who have insight will fall, so they may be refined, purified, and cleansed until the time of the end, for it will come at that appointed time. Still come at that point in time. I just thought this description of just like, it reminds me a little bit again, some of the things that Jesus teaches as well, where it's just like, man, like for my name and for my sake, like you will be persecuted.
Yeah.
Like, and those of you that are sincerely like seeking me and going after me, like it's gonna be hard, man. Like this description, you would love it to read. Like, yeah, those that know their God and will be strong and take action, and those who have insight among the people will give understanding to many and will prosper and have land and and be safe and hidden among, and people won't find them and they'll just live like kings. Like, but no, it's like they will fall by the sword and the flame, right?
Yep.
And even if we think about like how Jesus's disciples died, so many of them died by the sword and the flame,
They
right?
sure did.
Like shortly after
In jail.
they followed him. And so like, I don't know. I just thought it was so interesting to see that. That's like, no, man, following Jesus, following God comes with persecution.
It sure does.
Like it just does. And that's the promise really, and the assurance. And it's important to know that it's not going to be this blissful, just gleeful, life. There's joy.
Absolutely.
And there's peace.
Absolutely.
But Paul describes it as peace that surpasses understanding, right? Like it's beyond what actually makes sense, because technically you shouldn't have joy or peace in what you feel in some of these things. So I don't know. I just thought that piece was really interesting. The way it describes those that will follow God and that will actually be loyal to God and what their lives will actually be like. Yeah. But anything else here at the end of 11 or 12?
Yeah. But just in 12, like I said, I mentioned before, I had mentioned a few times that Michael was our prince, right? But it says it specifically just in chapter 12, verse 1. It says, at that time, Michael, the great prince who stands watch over your people, will rise up. There will be a time of distress, such as never has occurred since nations came into being until that time. But at that time, all your people who are found written in the book will escape. And so,
yeah,
once again, it's like this book of life or this book of truth that is speaking about, right? That at that time, like those people written in that book will escape, right? And then Michael is the one who is fighting on our behalf, and just the grace of the Lord to even just appoint an angel to fight on our behalf. We're just this, like you said, these helpless beings. But then in verse 2, though, many who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake, some to eternal life and some to disgrace and eternal contempt. Those who have insight will shine like the bright expanse of the heavens, and those who lead many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. And so that was just really, I just kind of answer some questions like, well, what happens to those who have already died, right, when Christ comes? Or what happens to those who have fallen, right? Like there's still this assurance that God's still giving us. Like those who are asleep will awaken. Some are going to go to heaven and some are going to go to hell. And, and then, those who have led people to righteousness and have done the right thing, like they will be the light for me, right? Like they will shine the way that I intended them to shine and be the light that shines and gives God glory, right?
Yeah.
Through their actions and their deeds. And so those are some of the things that just jumped out in the end for me.
Yeah, that's good. I think probably what stuck out to me was just this back and forth that Daniel has about like when all of this is gonna take place.
Yeah.
Like I just thought that was really interesting. Like again, I just appreciate his humility, man. Like I just appreciated Daniel is just this whole time he's just been like, I don't understand none of this. Like,
Yo,
I don't get any of it. I got all the questions. Okay, I'm like, he's just a kid in class. Like,
exactly.
Excuse me. Got a question. Got a question. Real quick. Okay, so when is this supposed to happen? And then he responds with like a time and times and half a time. It is verse 8. I heard but did not understand. Okay? I still don't get it. Okay. I heard what you said,
but
it's still not very clear. Okay. It's still not very clear. I still don't understand exactly what you're talking about. And then so he's like, so my Lord, okay, fine. If you're not going to tell me, if you're going to still talk in riddles and not tell me when, at least just tell me what's the outcome. Like, what's the point of all this? Right? And then he's just like, go your way, for the words are secret and sealed until the time's end. And I don't know. I thought it was just so funny, man. Like, I'm not mad at Daniel. I feel like I'd have been the same way.
Yes.
I'd have been like, I got all the questions, Lord.
So what is this?
I got all the questions. Help me understand. And what else to say? And then he just gives it to him, and then like to tell him it's a secret. And I don't know. I just thought that was so interesting, and it's one of the things that I've really been challenged with it a lot. You know, there's a sermon, another Francis Chan shout out here, where it's called the Power of a Quiet Life. And you know, he really got a challenge. Like, man, are we just satisfied with just the revelation God gives us as just being, you know, for us or for the few that kind of we are exposed to? Like, do we have to feel like it has to be something that, you know, we go viral on or share with everybody, like, you know, and that kind of thing? But that's essentially what Daniel, like, he gave us to Daniel. It was just like, man, write it down, seal it up.
Yeah.
It's not even for today. Like, you're not even gonna need it right now. You know, people are not gonna need it right now.
Right.
They're
not even listening to the things I'm telling them about.
Right. So. But Eric Victoria in 2024, they're gonna need to read that and know something, you know. And so I don't know. I just thought those two things were pretty interesting to me.
And then he just tells him like your time is going to be ending. He says, but as for you in verse 13, go on your way to the end. You will rest, and then you will rise to receive your allotted inheritance at the end of the days. And so it's just like, you're going to die. Then you'll rise and you'll get your inheritance. And I mean, just the assurance. I mean, for that's what I'm raising my hand to ask. Like, Lord, am I in? Like, am I in? Do I get the inheritance at the end? Like, am I working? And is it working? You know? Just to get that assurance. I know that, like, he has seen all of these dreadful things, and he's been wearied by it, and his heart's been broken down by it, and he's confused by a lot of it. But I think it's just still sweet that the Lord continues to tell him that he is loved by God, and he is valued by God. And then here at the end, assurance that he's going to rest and then raise and receive his inheritance. And his inheritance is just really kind of the Lord.
Okay, well, that brings us to the end of Daniel, this quick book that we had here, but so much in it, and those 12 chapters, and so much more as always that we could probably unpack if we sat here all day. But again, pray that this was helpful for you and need some additional context this week as we complete that book. We will pick up next week with the book of Hosea. And a few other books. I think I was saying in our Vibes Daily chat, which, quick shout out, download our church app. There's a chat group specifically for the discussions on the Vibes Daily videos and podcasts, and we called out. That's 27 books down now.
Yeah.
Now that we just finished Daniel. In the next week, it will be 32 books down. We are going to be moving through them pretty quickly here until we get to the New Testament in October. So appreciate you guys joining us. Thank you again for being a part of our community and this podcast. Continue to invite people. October 7th, we begin Matthew chapter 1. It's a great time for people to jump on board. with our reading plan. So we encourage you to invite them to be there at that time. But until next time, take care. God bless.
Thank you for joining us for the Vibes Daily Podcast. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or download our favorite, the Vibes Church app. Visit vibes.church/devoted for additional episodes, notes, details, and the latest merch. Join us next time as we continue our journey through the Bible. Take good care.